Hello and welcome to I Can't Believe It's Not the Mouse, the podcast all about animation not made by the mouse. I'm your host, Dr. Random Macias, and today we're talking about what I consider to be DreamWorks' greatest franchise. I know a lot of people love Shrek. I know a lot of people think that How to Train Your Dragon is their peak. Personally, I'm all for the Kung Fu Panda. Before we get started, I just want to say, if you're listening to this on YouTube, go ahead and give it a like, subscribe to the channel, feel free to comment, and ring the bell for notifications. Also, if you're on Spotify or just any other podcast site, follow this show on those platforms. When it comes to DreamWorks franchises that I think a lot of people didn't see coming, Kung Fu Panda has to be the one that's on the top of that list. Because if you look back at the original Kung Fu Panda, like the marketing and everything, we all thought this was going to be silly and dumb, right? Like the name was dumb, the concept seemed silly and dumb, and yeah, I just remember the whole thing just sounded bad. And it didn't help that this was during the period where Jack Black was kind of in a bunch of mediocre comedies, so it was like, okay, this is going to be one of those really bad DreamWorks movies. And of course, at the time, there was a whole reputation of DreamWorks just doing nothing but pop culture references, which I don't think was fairly accurate or fair to them, but it was a thing that everyone latched onto just to mock them, even though, I don't know, I feel like around that time, that was only really true if it was a Shrek movie. Maybe like the first Madagascar, but I don't know, I feel like a lot of the other ones, at least if they had pop culture references, they were fairly smart about it, and even the ones that I mentioned weren't too bad about it. But yeah, no one expected anything out of this Kung Fu Panda movie. And then it turned out that it's not only one of the sweetest DreamWorks movies, but it's also just one of the smartest, one of the most sincere ones that they've ever done. It's a very sincere movie, and that's what makes it work. It's an incredible movie. I mean, the only thing that I would say was kind of a downside for it was that this was released the same year that Pixar decided to release their what I consider to be their best movie, which is Wall-E. So while this did get a lot of love, a lot of praise, and whatnot, I feel like it might have been a little overshadowed by that. But for what it's worth, still very incredible movie. It's one that I remember not really looking forward to and not really thinking much about. But then word of mouth was like, oh yeah, this movie's really good. And I don't know if I really should admit this, but this was during the day where YouTube was a little easier to find full movies. Granted, it was chopped up into pieces because that was at the time where YouTube only allowed 10-minute videos. But I actually was able to find the full movie on YouTube because it came up on my feed. I ended up watching it that way. Part of me regrets it because I should have watched it in theaters, and of course, it's bad to watch movies in an illegal manner, but I mean, I saw a great movie. I can't. What am I complaining about? I was amazed by just the level of detail when it came to the action, the fact that the story, like more so than a lot of other DreamWorks movies and even a lot of other family movies, like it really does tie into its themes very well. Like in terms of like, oh, there's no accidents. Oh, trying to prevent something from happening tends to lead to that thing happening, and stuff like that. Like it feels very much like, okay, even though this is essentially a movie about, essentially it's a movie made by white people who were just trying to honor a bunch of like Chinese mythology and whatnot. It does feel like, okay, they actually took the time to study and learn it, to implement those kind of beliefs and like the messages that you would find in a Chinese story into this movie, so that while it is very much an American product, you can see that, okay, they actually did put the effort into studying the culture that they were representing. Of course, it's still very cartoony because it's talking animals instead of actual people, and it is an original story. It's not like it's based on an actual myth or anything like that. But just amount of effort feels very special because not a lot of other movies would have done that. Even at that, I would say even even in today, there's a lot of movies that I feel don't put in that much effort into it. But yeah, like everything about it just feels like something like, yeah, I can believe this being at least influenced by Chinese storytelling. And I just love that a lot of the themes and messages play a factor into the story in a way where it actually feels like, okay, these people actually cared about the material that they were doing, and they weren't just like, okay, well, we're doing a goofy Chinese kung fu movie. They actually have a whole thing built into it. Poe being a kung fu master isn't just them being like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if a panda knew kung fu? And yeah, it kind of delves into that, but it is very much thing where it's like, okay, well, what if we actually showcase that anyone can do kung fu? And even though they don't explore those characters too much in this movie, you can kind of see it through like the Viper and the Mantis characters. Like, hey, look, we have these very weird, very strange creatures, and realistically, they're mainly there because it's like, okay, well, these are known like styles of kung fu, so it's kind of like a pun. But I feel like, intentional or not, it feels like that's supposed to kind of like lean into the message like, hey, look, anyone can do it. So even this big fat panda is able to learn how to do this stuff, and it all comes down to how he does it, not how society expects him to do it, which I thought was kind of cool, especially because, as a kid, you probably just look at it and think like, well, they're teaching him how to do kung fu via eating just because it's funny. But as you get older, you kind of realize like, oh no, it's actually because they're taking this seriously, and they're realizing like, hey, look, the methods we've been using to teach you kung fu don't really work on you, both because of who you are as a person, but also because of your physicality. And we needed to meet you at your physicality, as who you are as a person, to teach you this stuff properly. And of course, it does pay off because, you know, even though it seems kind of like a goofy fight, by the end of the movie when he eventually fights the villain, Tai Lung, which, look, I feel like this movie is over a decade old. It's very popular. I don't think I need to hold back on any spoiling or anything. It's very comedic. And yeah, as a kid, you probably just think like, oh, well, it's goofy because Panda's fat. But again, as an adult, as an older viewer, you pretty much see it as, oh, it's not that he's just being fat and being comedic, and Tai Lung didn't expect to fight that. It's very much that Poe does know kung fu. He can stop him. Of course, even Tai Lung at some point thinks that he got this power from the scroll of the Dragon Warrior. Turns out it's all in himself. And, you kind of realize, like, yeah, it's goofy, but not because it's trying to be like this, funny thing where it's like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if a fat guy went up against this kung fu master? But so much as like, okay, these are two kung fu masters, but here's one that is open about who they are and how their physicality works in tandem with the techniques, versus someone who only thought of the techniques and whatnot without considering the physicality. Basically, the person who just did the work with no acknowledgement of their shortcomings or strengths, versus the one who fully took on the skills based around that. So it's very interesting to me. I think it's definitely something where it's like, yeah, this is why this movie resonates so well even as an adult, because at first you look at it and it's just goofy stupid nonsense. You continue watching it and you realize like, no, it's actually imparting these beautiful lessons that to this day we still need to learn, like, not just as people but as like nations. Like, you get those tweets, posts, whatever, on Twitter or Facebook, whatever, where it's pretty much like, oh, this person failed in school or whatever because they gave him a test based on this, and they pretty much told him like, oh, you had to know this and this and this and this, ignoring what that kid really needed to know, and how that kid could have learned that stuff if they had bothered teaching based around their stuff. The whole like, hey, look, we're having a test based on who's the best climber, and you have some of the people, some of the participants being like a fish or whatever. I hope this is coming through as well as I expected to. I feel like I may not be selling it well enough, but that is exactly what I feel like. It's pretty much understanding the physicality, the limits, and the strengths of an individual based around who they are rather than what you expect them to be. And seeing that, yes, anyone can do this incredible stuff, even if they're not who you expected them to be, as long as you understand how you can make their, their whole being into that instead of expecting them to already fit in like a, perfect, perfect puzzle piece. Molding the person. I don't know. It's very impressive stuff. I've barely even talked about the animation, which still holds up. I mean, yeah, you can definitely tell it's not the most top notch animation, especially because we've had 3 other sequels since then and they all look better than this movie. But still, the way this movie implements, like, there's scenes where they do like 2D animation, like it opens with a 2D animation dream sequence, and at other times they play around with the color. And again, it does feel very Chinese influence. Like, this is the kind of stuff that you would see in a Chinese painting or just Chinese art in general. And it's just very great. It's awesome. Again, the animation on the action is top notch. Some of the best action animation I've seen in CG. There's a lot of amazing stuff like escape sequence from prison. Incredible moment. Just both in animation and live action, just film in general. One of the best breakout sequences ever. One of the best action sequences, as far as I'm concerned. Just seeing how this character, and this is the thing that I love about this movie, is that again, it actually plans things out properly. Where it's like, oh look, we have this whole bit where the messenger comes in to warn the guards about Tai Lung escaping. The guards see it as no threat. They kind of mess around with the bird. At one point, the duck basically drops a feather, and you don't think much of it. You think it's just like, okay, well, that's just the little animation thing. Duck got scared and stunned by these people. Whatever. After the guard mocks Tai Lung, you see that feather just fall down right in front of him. At which point you realize, like, oh, they were actually building up to something. And yeah, that's because Tai Lung, using his tail, uses that to pick the lock. And again, incredible sequence. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. If you haven't seen the movie, I mean, realistically, what are you waiting for at this point? People have told you since this one that this is a great franchise. As a franchise, Kung Fu Panda has gone everywhere. As far as I'm concerned, the second one is the best one. We'll get to that someday. The third one, kind of a downgrade from both of these, but still a good movie. And the fourth one, I mean, I need to revisit the third one to properly measure it, but I'd say it's about on par. I know a lot of people are hating on the fourth one, but honestly, I think it's, the action and the comedy are still top notch. Realistically, what was missing from it for me was just some of the heart, but I do like that it is a proper next step to the story, and where this one is going back to the original. It's about how Po started as the Dragon Warrior. I like that. Like, as we get to a new trilogy, it's about how he's training a new Dragon Warrior. So I think that's cool. That's where I would have taken it. I do think it could have been better, but for what it's worth, there's still a lot of good animation, a lot of good character stuff. I don't know. I can't really complain too much about it. Uh, there's a lot of other franchises that are much dumber once they get to part 4, which this is not to say that that's an excuse for this one to not be as good as the other ones, but I do think that there's still a lot of stuff that works really well, even if the stuff that made this one so much more special as an adult, as a thing for adults, isn't entirely present in that. But it is what it is. But yeah, it's a great franchise. I mean, there's multiple shows. I've never really watched any of the shows. Don't really care to watch those shows. From the little I've seen of like one of the early ones, I think was the first show that they did. Wasn't too impressive. I've heard some good things, but I'm just like, I'm not too big on doing shows on, based on movies. Half the time, or a majority of the time, they're just, I don't know, just not really worth it. If you're a fan of that stuff, I get it. I do have my own soft spots for certain shows. I remember growing up with Timon and Pumbaa, loved it. Um, Granted, I guess that's very different in comparison because that's more of like a Looney Tunes type thing, only with supporting characters from The Lion King. But I don't know. There's of course the theme park stuff. There's a cool attraction in Universal. I can't say it's as good as the Shrek 4D, but for what it's worth, it's a fun little show just to chill with. But just seeing all this stuff grow out of Kung Fu Panda is still amazing because I still remember watching it. Even when I watched the original movie, I was like, I really liked it. I think it was good, but as deep as it was, I don't know if I really want sequels to it. And it's not because I don't think they couldn't tell more stories within it, but I always feared that a sequel might make it exactly what I thought that first movie was. But then Kung Fu Panda 2 came out, and it's like, okay, no, they can really do some smart stuff. Like, even Kung Fu Panda 3 and 4, even if they're not as top notch as the first two movies are, I still think that there are aspects to them that I feel like, yeah, for a franchise built on this name, this concept, and whatnot, it still has aspects in there that I feel some people might not recognize as being as brilliant as these two movies that showcase that, yeah, this is a really strong franchise that has a lot of well thought out stuff in it. But that's going all into what came after. It's always important to check how it all started and how it all began. And for me, this is just one of the most perfect movies that DreamWorks has ever made. Again, only improved by its sequel because the voice acting is top notch. Of course, everyone knows Jack Black as Po the Panda is great. Not gonna get into whatever Jack Black is doing right now. That's not important to this discussion. You got Ian McShane as Tai Lung, who I feel like a lot of people dismissed back when it came out. I remember hearing complaints about how the villain was kind of weak in the movie. I highly disagree, and rewatching it, I'm like, yeah, I don't know where any of that complaints came from because it's a great performance, and just even beyond the action and the animation, you really get this emotional story about how he was this former student, and I feel like they do it a lot better than some other movies that have done it because you do get the feeling of like the master just seeing their essentially what a person who was their son become a monster. With the little that we see, it's really impressive. Which, speaking of master Dustin Hoffman, I feel like in the sequels, he's probably the one that is a weak link. I remember, not to get into Kung Fu Panda 4 spoilers, but I remember thinking like, I know Dustin Hoffman deserves a paycheck every now and then. That being said, for these stories to work, I do think they need to kill off Shifu now. And like, I feel like he's already had his time. Great character. I love him in this stuff, and he still makes me laugh, even in the later ones. But I feel like at this point, emotionally and for a story, for the story to progress, I do think they need to kill him off because he's kind of just there now. But in this first movie, his presence was really, incredible. It's the best that he's ever been. You got the Furious Five. In this movie, they're kind of just there for the most part. Angelina Jolie as Tigress is definitely the one that has gotten, the chance to shine the most in this franchise of these five characters. And that's true here. The rest of them are just kind of like, okay, that's kind of neat that they're there. Like, you have Lucy Liu and Jackie Chan as Viper and Monkey. They're all right. They get better in the sequel. Same thing with Crane and Mantis, both of them voiced by Seth Rogen as Mantis, and you have David Cross as Crane. Again, they have their moments here, but they get better in the sequel. I will say that Seth Rogen as Mantis does get one of the sweeter scenes in the movie, which is the whole acupuncture bit when they're kind of healing up Poe as he's about to learn the thing about Tai Lung, which I know a lot of you are probably going to find this stupid and probably, call me stupid over it, but I do feel kind of stupid about it, but I just barely realized on this recent rewatch that the whole acupuncture scene is supposed to be building up to the Tai Lung fight in terms of, like, of course, the main thing that we see is, of course, the backstory and whatnot, which very important. But the fact that Mantis is struggling to put in like actual acupuncture on Poe is supposed to foreshadow the fact that Tai Lung's main attack, the pressure point thing, is not gonna work. Of course, even more so because he even mentions like, hey, it's hard to find all the actual pressure points within all the muscle and tissue. So it's definitely one where it's like, yeah, we're foreshadowing it. We're not telling you directly, but the fact that he's struggling means that when an attack that is focused entirely on that is going to be done later, they're going to struggle with it too, which I think that's brilliant. I love that, and I feel kind of dumb that I only just realized that that was what that was doing, because again I was more focused on the fact of the backstory to even think about it. I don't know. I don't know how I missed it all these years, but that's pretty great. A lot of great stuff in this movie where it's just building up to everything that's gonna happen without much thought to it. Of course, Uguay is an incredible character as well. I know I keep on saying incredible, but that's because I really love this movie. Uguay, fantastic. I get why a lot of people have started to meme his the scene where he essentially dies or where he passes away. I get why people have memed it, because it's like it's emotional, it's kind of strange, but at the end of the day, it is a very strong emotional bit, and it's like, yeah, we can find ways to make this a little funny. I know there was this whole Avengers meme game thing that was on YouTube. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but it's definitely worth a watch if you just want something silly and stupid, where they have all these different characters coming in to help out the Avengers for Endgame instead of Black Widow sacrificing herself for the Soul Stone. It's Oogway, and they do this whole bit, and it's kind of funny. Like, the character imparts a lot of great wisdom. He's voiced by Randa Duke Kim. I hope I'm saying that right. Um, and he really sells like a lot of like the old wise but kind of goofy master stuff, where he's like, oh, there are no accidents, and then he mentions like, oh, but only if you don't believe in the Dragon Warrior. So I'm like, okay, he turns it around. He's always goofy. He's always optimistic, and I just love that. Like, he pretty much knows everything that's gonna play out in a way, despite not really knowing it, because he's confident in everything he knows. I kind of wish we would get, and this is again where I'm like, I think we kind of need to have Shifu move on. Like, I'm not saying that he needs to essentially act like Uguay, because of course he's a different character, but I do want to see him reach that point where he's like so at peace, so full of wisdom that he is ready to pass on. I do want to see that happen in the franchise. I think it should have happened in 4, but at the very least 5, they got to do it. I think it's time. I know it's gonna be sad. It's gonna suck. It's definitely gonna be very emotional for us Kung Fu Panda fans, but I think properly it has to be done now. And speaking of wise figures and whatnot, you got James Hong as Poe's father. We eventually learn he's the adopted father, but in this movie, we just know he's just the father. There's even jokes about Poe possibly being adopted, but they don't go too deep into it. And I think for this first movie, that was the right call. Leave that for the sequel. And I like the fact that, at first you're thinking he's going to be the stereotypical, like, oh, he doesn't believe that Poe can do anything. He wants him to just stay with the family business. And he kind of is like that, but he is open to at least supporting him with his dreams. Like, even at the end when it seems like Poe, being a dragon warrior, being a kung fu master, was not going to work out. He still is very supportive. It's like, look, it might not have worked out, but keep in mind that there is always another option. I'm your option here. I'm always going to be supportive. In fact, the new restaurant that I'm opening is going to be more like, it's going to be more fit for you, because the old restaurant wasn't built entirely to accommodate you. So we're going to have a restaurant that is made to work with you. I love that. It's like, it's nice to see a supportive father character who still has that whole beat of like, okay, this is probably not gonna work, but he's not doing it as a way to, put down Poe. He's doing it as a way of like, look, sometimes stuff doesn't work out, and there's always an option for something else. And I want you to work with me, not because I think that that's the only thing you can do, but because you're my son and I care for you, and it'd just be nice to work with my son. Like you see the love and care for it. So I don't know. It's kind of it's kind of making me tear up right now just thinking about it, just how nice that is. Um, I don't know. This movie's just, I mean, I've been saying it repeatedly. It's incredible. It's beautiful. And that's because it entirely is. I think if you haven't watched it, what are you waiting for? Go ahead, watch it now. If you have watched it, of course, watch it again. You probably don't even need me to say that. It's definitely worth watching. The fights are amazing. The emotion is great. Just the whole movie is very well done. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you again next time. As a reminder, I Can't Believe It's Not the Mouse is the podcast all about animation not made by the mouse. This is your host, Octaviano Macias, signing out. Thanks for stopping by. Go ahead and follow this channel. Subscribe, like, and comment. Ring the bell for notifications. Go ahead and also follow my podcast. And give some love to my Patreon account while you're at it. It's www.patreon.com/psycams. Again, thanks for stopping by, and I hope you come back for more in the future.